Jameson, tell us a little bit about Casa's overall security model. I mean, the three taglines here are multi-signature, multi-device, multi-location. Can you just dig into what that means a little bit more?
Sure. The simplest way to describe our incredibly complicated security model that has thought through every possible thing that could go wrong is that we have designed it to eliminate single points of failure. So obviously, we want to keep keys away from attackers, be that hackers on the internet or even physical attackers who may show up at your residence. But more importantly, we want to give you a level of resilience and robustness that even if something goes wrong, if there is a natural disaster, if you make a mistake, if you lose a device, if you step on it and break it, any number of things that could go wrong, we want to ensure that that does not turn into a catastrophic loss. So it's all about redundancy and resilience and the ability to recover if any one particular failure occurs.
Can you talk a little bit about how Bitcoiners should think about this keys tab when they open their app? I mean, this is something that's pretty unique that isn't in any other Bitcoin related app or any other crypto app even that I've seen.
Yeah, we've visualized the key set differently than what most people are used to. In fact, most people are probably not used to any visualization whatsoever. And that's because we want to design the software application as a way that helps guide people towards best practices. And when we're thinking through all the best practices of key management, one of the biggest things here with multisig is to keep those keys in separate places. And so instead of just telling someone to think about, this key or that key, instead, it's a lot easier to think of, well, I have my Trezor at my office, I have my cold card in my bank vault in a really high security, air gapped scenario, and I have my mobile key on my phone, and then, Casa has a key that's also securely stored offline. So it's us trying to get rid of a lot of these technical complexities and bring things into the physical realm, which is a lot easier for people to reason about.
So let's say if I tap into one of my keys here, like let's say I tap into my home key, there are a few options. So I can view my pub key, I can mark it as compromised, or I can perform a health check. Can you talk through particularly compromised or performing a health check? What are those two?
Sure. So the health check is important just so that you can have some additional peace of mind, so that you can make sure that that key is still in a high integrity state on whatever hardware is being used to secure it. And essentially, that is using cryptographic methods within the Bitcoin protocol to create a message and then sign it with the key on that device, and then get that signed message back to Casa, in which our software then verifies the integrity of what has been signed. So that gives you additional peace of mind without you having to actually move your coins and spend fees, spend time going around to different locations to create an entire Bitcoin transaction that can then be validated by the entire network. Instead, you can do that validation privately and locally. With the compromised functionality, this is an easy way for you to recover from a error state where you basically have partial degradation in your key set. Maybe one of your keys got lost or stolen or failed a health check, or maybe you just want to upgrade it to the latest and greatest hardware device that recently came out. We make it very easy for you to just say, hey, I want to remove this from my key set and I want to replace it with something else. You get that new piece of hardware, plug it in, and then we actually walk you through the process of rotating your funds over to this new key set, so that you don't have to worry about all the hairy details of what's going on under the hood.
Right. And for listeners who may not know, can you remind them what hardware wallets Casa supports?
So at current time, we support Trezor 1, Trezor Model T, Ledger Nano S, Ledger Nano X, and Cold Card, preferably Mark III.
Can you talk a little bit about just how people sign a transaction with Keymaster? That's something I think a lot of people don't totally get. It's like they have their keys, they have their app. How do these two things come together, and what does a normal signing flow look like?
So actually initializing a transaction is really no different than what people will be used to with any other wallet software. You can scan a QR code, you can paste in a Bitcoin address, and then just say, you know, I want to send this much, either a fiat or a Bitcoin denomination of value. And at that point in time, the first thing that we do is actually instruct you to sign the transaction locally on your mobile device, which will then unlock and use the key on your phone using whatever authentication method you have securing your phone. It could be a fingerprint, face ID, or a PIN if you prefer non-biometric methods. And the reason that we think it's important to do that is because as soon as you get that initial signature on the transaction, it effectively becomes immutable. You know that no one else can grab that partially signed transaction and change attributes of it, like the value or the address that it's going to. At this point, you have a partially signed transaction with one signature, and you need to go around and add other signatures with your other devices, which we prompt you to do in the app, send you out notifications for how to complete that signature. Then it's just up to you to go around and access your various hardware devices, plug them in, verify the destination address and value on that hardware device to give you even additional layers of security that nobody's tampering with anything. And once you have enough signatures, we just show you in the app, you know, this is ready to go out to the network, and you hit broadcast, and it'll propagate through the Bitcoin network and get confirmed.
All right, so I'm looking at my key set now, and a number of the keys I control, and then there's one key with a Casa logo. So this is the Casa Recovery Key. We get a lot of questions about this key, whether or not it's kind of a master key, if it has privileges that the other keys don't have. Can you talk a little bit just about how that key works technically, and then just our thought behind how it should be used and when?
Yeah, from a technical and security perspective, this is just one out of your N keys, whether you have a 2 of 3 setup, 3 of 5, 3 of 6, whatever. The Casa key is no different at the Bitcoin protocol level as any other key in your key set. So there's no additional weight, no additional properties that it has within the Casa system. Rather, it is there as another cold storage offline setup that has its own diverse set of security properties, specifically a wide variety of security procedures that we implement at Casa and authentication protocols that we require before we are going to use our key to sign off on a transaction. So this is meant to be difficult to use. It's meant to be used very rarely and in emergency recovery situations where the user has already lost a sufficient number of keys that they no longer have enough to rotate their key set on their own. So if you get into a situation where you need Casa to help recover, you'll then have to go through authenticating yourself in any number of ways. It may be through various recovery questions that we've asked you to set up when you came on board. Some people may prefer more in-depth authentication. With some of our clients, we'll even do a video call basically with them, or if they don't want it to do with themselves, we can even set up other procedures to talk to friends, family, other acquaintances to basically ensure that you're not under duress and that everything is okay. Now, even once we authenticate, we're not going to sign immediately. We have other things in place like multi-day time delays to once ensure that this is not a process that could easily be exploited by an attacker.
One feature that users are going to notice anytime they create a new multi-sig key set or a new multi-sig wallet is they're going to get an email with what are called our sovereign recovery info instructions. What are those?
So, like I said, we want to eliminate every single point of failure when it comes to Casa, and that includes Casa. If something happens and our company ceases to respond, our servers go down, we go out of business, any type of catastrophic situation that could happen with Casa, we want to ensure that that does not result in people losing the ability to access their funds. So in order to get around that, we need it to be possible for a user to recreate their wallet in other software that doesn't rely upon our servers and be able to sweep those funds and move them, without asking permission from us. So the sovereign recovery information is a step-by-step instruction guide that includes all of the public key and derivation data and basically click-by-click steps of how to recreate your wallet in open source third-party software so that you can access your funds in the event of a Casa catastrophe. Though we fully intend that no one should ever have to use this, we want it to be there just in case. We want to be prepared for every possible circumstance.
For users who maybe are just getting set up with Casa Gold, what are the right ways for them to think about where I want to put my wallet and how I want to keep it safe and how often I should check on it?
So essentially, you never want to have a signing threshold or a sufficient threshold of devices in one place that
Mhm.
could be used, by an attacker to steal the money, or that could suffer a catastrophe that results in their destruction all at once. So if you're using a 2 of 3 setup, you should ensure that your hardware device is, not at your home. It's preferably as far away from your normal day-to-day circumstances as you are comfortable having. Now, of course, there's there's no specific advice that I can give that will apply to everyone because everyone's situation is unique and they'll have different trade-offs that they're willing to make between security and convenience. So
Yeah.
essentially, the further apart that you are placing your keys, the more secure they will be, not only against attackers, but against a variety of different disasters that could happen. Even just natural weather-related disasters, fires, floods, etc. But the trade-off, of course, is it requires more travel time when you want to actually make a transaction out of that wallet.
Can you just talk through what replacing a key with Casa looks like and what's going on behind the scenes?
Sure. So whenever you're doing a key replacement, we're essentially walking you through creating a transaction that is sending to a new set of keys. It will be reusing the existing keys that you have not lost access to, but you will be replacing the lost ones with a new key set. So essentially spending from whatever devices are still available to create a sufficient number of signatures that we can then move the funds over to the new set of keys. Now, this there's a number of different ways that can happen depending on your setup. If you're a 2 of 3 user, one
So
difference will
the
are you using 2 hardware wallets or are you using a mobile key and a hardware wallet? The nice thing about the mobile key is that it also has its own fairly unique backup mechanism where you should be able to restore a lost mobile device on a new mobile phone, assuming that you still have your Casa login and you still have access to either your Apple or Google account that you were using on your original phone.
Going into what looks like it could be an important time for Bitcoin over the next 6 months, what are the top three, threats or dangers that Bitcoiners of all stripes need to be thinking about and making sure they have coverage for?
I mean, I think that the top threat is just losing access to your keys.
Yeah.
It's usually through negligence of some sort, right? Maybe it's because you just forget about it, and someone comes through, even maybe you, and accidentally throws them out. We've seen many cases of devices and backups and stuff getting thrown out just because someone didn't realize what it was, or a family member might not realize how important something is. um, Other than that, as long as you are using hardware devices that keep your keys off of internet connected services, that'll protect you from quite a few different threats.
Yeah.
It seems like these days, security in the Bitcoin space has gotten to a point that the biggest threat seems to, at least for self-custodying people, the biggest threat seems to be phishing and various types of scams that essentially hack your brain and convince you to bypass all of your technical security measures to send your money to someone who is not actually going to give you whatever they've promised in return.
Cool. All right. Well, Jameson, I think we're all set. Thanks so much.
All right.